So the recoup for each of the neighbors, this loop body, this loop code here, is going to be executed for each of the neighbors when we call each of those neighbors A in turn. So we're going to do it for the first neighbor, call it A for the sake of that body, and we'll do it for the second neighbor, call that A. Now, when we're giving it the name A, that's the question, what sort of thing A is? Is it a main? Is it a simulation? Is it an agent? And it turns out that here we're treating neighbors, when we're going over each of the neighbors, all we know is that they're an agent. Okay? We don't actually know, it doesn't tell us automatically that they're a cell. Now all agents in this model are cells. We know that. We know we didn't put in any deer here, right? We didn't have deer running around this game of life. Conway wasn't so motivated. We don't have people here. All we have is cells, right, in this game. And in order to accumulate the information we need to know it's a cell. We need to treat it as a cell because we need to ask, is it alive? And not every agent has this liveness criteria. Perhaps our agent represents a company. We don't really ask whether a company is live. Or maybe it represents a car. And we don't ask whether a car is alive. Maybe it represents a robot. And we don't really use the term alive for a robot. So we have this thing called an agent. Now, we know as people who created this model that it's a cell. And what we're telling it here is, hey, look, treat this A as a cell. Just treat it as if it's a cell. And so the way you do this is something called a cast, or it's also called type coercion. You take this thing, so this is a reference to some cell, but all it knows is it's a reference to an agent. And a cell is a type of agent. It's an agent. It's a more particular type of agent. It's a cell. There's other particular types of agents, a deer, or a person, or a car, or a company, but here we know it's a cell. So we're basically saying, hey, look, I got this reference to this thing. All it knows is that it's an agent. As far as it knows, it's just an agent. But I know it's a cell, so I'm going to treat it like a cell. And I do that by putting this thing in this parenthesis. This is the name of what I want to treat it as, a cell. And I'm going to say treat it as a cell. And given that it's a cell, I can ask whether it's alive, right? Where does this alive, where's that coming from? It's a variable in that's declared in what class? It's declared in cell. Yeah. So each of these guys here have a thing that says, are they alive or not? And it's either true or false, right? And so we're just asking, given that, I'll get to you just a second. Given that we know it's a cell, we can ask, hey, are you alive or not? And then it will give that back to us. So you can think of this as appeasing the limited understanding. So let me say it this way. It turns out that computers are not always all that smart. Okay, maybe probably that's not news to anyone here, but sometimes computers are pretty clever, but sometimes they fall short. And one of the ways they fall short is they don't secretly realize that every agent in our model is actually a cell. And this is just our way of working around their limitations. It's just saying, sometimes we have to tell them, hey, this is a hint, this is a cell. So now, if we know it's a cell, we can ask for it's alive. If we didn't do that, and I'll get to you in just a sec. If we didn't do that, let's just go see what happens if we don't do that, okay? So let's go over to this, and we'll go to cell, okay? Let's just go to cell here, okay? And we will go to an agent, okay? The properties of cell, we go to the agent thing here. Let's suppose we got rid of that, okay? Don't do this at home, but let me just do this, okay? I'm going to do it in front of you. So I'm going to just say a.alive, right? You might think that's fine. I mean, after all, each of these neighbors, I know it's a cell, right? I know this is a cell, so why shouldn't I just say, get cell 1, and call it A, and then I'll ask if it's alive. And if so, this thing, right? And ask cell 2, ask if it's alive. Ask cell 3, 4, 5. And you would think you could do that, but what will happen there is that it will object. Watch this. See, it says alive cannot be resolved or is not a field. Now, this is something where it's basically saying, I don't know what alive is. It is. But it doesn't know, maybe this is, see, this is what I'm saying about its limits. It doesn't know, it's not smart enough to realize this is a model which only has one type of agent in it. Because after all, maybe for all it knows, given its limited reasoning about it, maybe you have a cell, you have a car.
What if I needed to use a cell and a car, and I wanted to have neighbors, and I wanted to rely not on the cells, but on the cars?
Sure. So
couldn't I use the overarching class?
Yes, you can. But then it would be quite reasonable to say you can't necessarily assume that your neighbor has an alive status. That alive status is something that's associated with a cell. Maybe it wouldn't be associated with your car.
What if I hate in the car?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think you'd understand that better. Like if I went to add another agent to the model, it's called car.
Yeah, and that also has status alive.
Well, let's suppose it didn't have status alive.
What if it did?
Okay, what if it did?
And I wanted to use it.
Yes, okay. So what you're saying is that it should be smart enough, and what I'm telling you is it ain't smart.
And how would I do that? So would I say and?
What you would do is, okay, so if you're saying how would you get it to do it either way, okay. So there's a couple ways to do it. Without wanting to go into too much detail, yes, you could make them both subtypes of a common class, which would be sort of a living thing class or something like that, and that would be a cleaner way to do it. Another way you could do it is you could have each of them have a you could have a common subclass or common superclass that has a method named isAlive, and you call that method, so you don't go directly into them. But that's outside the scope of this lecture, so forgive me if I've thrown people way off. But there's a thing called superclass we'll be getting to. An agent is in fact a superclass of cell. I'll just give a brief hint of this. Ladies and gentlemen, people are mammals. Mammals are animals. Animals are a type of living creature or living quantity. I don't know what to call it. Living organism. And you could imagine within your model wanting to capture multiple types of animals, for example, and you want certain properties to be held for any animal in your model. You want it to have a certain, I don't know, feeding habits, and what is an impulse to drink water, an impulse to eat, or something like that. Maybe more closer to home. Maybe you have a person class in your model, and then you have males and females, and males and females each have unique characteristics, but then there's a lot in common, right? So in common, there might be things like, what's their age? What's their ethnicity? What's their occupational status? What's their income? those would be common to males and females. And if you define males and females as classes within your model, you don't necessarily want to sort of redefine all those things. You might want to have a person class that captures the common characteristics, and then have males and females as kind of specializations of that common class, where you know, females would have things associated with childbearing, pregnancy, and males might have you know, bizarre behavior under certain circumstances or whatever, you know, want to go watch cars drive around the circle or something like that. And so, you know, you might basically you could have specializations of this common theme, but you could define that common theme, and we'll see how this can be done in AnyLogic. Okay, so we'll see how there can be a common thing that captures the common characteristics, and then you can have different variations of it within your model, and avoid having to duplicate a lot of that logic. Okay, yes, but you've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, just a quick question. So suppose in another model I had a car class.
Car class, yeah.
Can I just copy and paste that into this, or is it not that?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you could just, but more than that, you can actually, you can in some places package them up in a way that instead of just cutting and pasting. The problem with cutting and pasting is that if you cut and paste a bug, it has to go. You have to go fix it at many places.
Right.
Problem is also if you have to evolve it, like you have a clever idea of how to evolve it, you have to evolve it at several places. So instead you might want to package it up so there's only one definition of it and just multiple things can use it,
Okay.
right? And that can be a desirable thing, and it's possible to do that sort of thing. To do that to some approximation. I could talk with you separately. Okay, so this is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't know that an agent is alive, because it doesn't know what agents are out there. It doesn't know that 5 years from now, I'm going to define a platypus agent. Or I'm going to define a, and I'm going to have a is claw sharp, variable. Or it doesn't know that I'm going to define a Martian agent or whatever, right? It doesn't know what agents are out there, and it's not smart enough to look at your thing and say, oh, you have a cell that has no life. So instead, it just says, I don't know, agents in general don't have a liveness property. I don't know what to do. So to treat this as a cell, I have to go like this. I have to put these little parentheses. This is called a cast, and it's saying, treat this reference as if it's a reference to a cell. And it is. I know it's a reference to a cell. And if I do that, then it says build completed successfully. It's fine. You notice, by the way, I pressed this thing up here, which is a build model. That automatically gets done in running the model, but sometimes you just want to use it because you don't want to run the model immediately. Okay? So this is this thing that shows ones and zeros. Okay?
What's the one to the right of that?
This one is build all. Like if I have multiple projects here, it builds them all simultaneously. Okay? Sorry, if I. Okay. Okay. So let's continue on. Okay. So we're just going down these list of variables.